Good morning and welcome to Africa Good Morning, where we will be bringing you the latest in news stories from across the continent and beyond. My name is Glenora Shipura.
And I am Ashwin Mberi, and today is World Telecommunications Day. World Telecommunications Day celebrates the constant evolution of one of the most important factors of our lives, communication. The main goal of World Communications Day is to highlight the importance of communication and how information travels across the world. It also aims to increase awareness of how crucial communication is in our lives and stimulates the development of technologies in the field. Here's a video on World Telecommunications Day. Today is Tuesday, the 17th of May, and these are your top stories. Some Ethiopians claim forced recruitment by Tigrayan forces. Authorities in Ethiopia's war-shattered Tigray region are forcing young people to join their army's fight against the central government by threatening and jailing relatives, according to captured fighters and residents. The war in northern Ethiopia since late 2020 has killed thousands of civilians and uprooted millions, triggering famine and devastating infrastructure, though it has garnered less attention globally than other conflicts such as the war in Ukraine. The Tigray People's Liberation Front says it is defending the region's 6 million people against subjugation by federal government, but Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed accuses the Tigrayan party of rebelling to try to restore its grip on national government, which dominated until his appointment in 2018. Now, Reuters conducted a dozen interviews from February to May with residents of Tigray, captured fighters and aid workers that provide a picture of forced recruitment by local officials in several parts of the region. The testimony suggests some Tigrayans who volunteered in droves earlier in the war are becoming increasingly reluctant to fight in a conflict that has ground to a stalemate following a ceasefire in March.
In our next story, 10 Nigerian cabinet ministers resign to run in 2023 polls. 10 Nigerian cabinet ministers, including the junior petroleum minister, have resigned to run in next year's election, the information minister Lai Mohammed has said. Now, on Thursday, the government asked all ministers, ambassadors, agency heads, and other political appointees to resign on or by May 16th if they decide to join the country's 2023 election race. Other ministers that had resigned as of Friday morning include Ministers of Justice, Transport, Labor, Niger Delta Region, and Women's Affairs. The junior ministers for Mines and Education also resigned, Mohammed said. President Muhammadu Buhari also acts as a senior petroleum minister. Now, Buhari will step down after serving 2 four-year terms following the February 2023 ballot. At least 4 of the ministers who resigned are looking to replace Buhari, as is Central Bank Governor Gotv Emefiele, who is making an unprecedented presidential run. Nigeria's governing party and the leading opposition parties are running primary elections later this month and must pick their candidates by June 3rd.
Somalia re-elects former leader Hassan Sheikh Mohamud as president. Somalia handed Hassan Sheikh Mohamud the presidency for a second time following Sunday's long overdue election in the troubled Horn of Africa nation, which is confronting an Islamist insurgency and the threat of famine. After a marathon poll involving 36 candidates that was broadcast live on state TV, parliamentary officials counted 214 votes in favor of former President Mohamud, far more than the number required to defeat incumbent Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, better known as Farmajo. Celebratory gunfire erupted in the capital Mogadishu, with many hoping that the vote will draw a line under a political crisis that has lasted well over a year after Farmajo's term ended in February 2021 without an election. Mohamud, who was previously president from 2012 to 2017, was sworn in shortly after the votes were counted and struck a conciliatory tone as he addressed the country. Now, Somalia's international partners had repeatedly warned that the election delays caused by political infighting were a dangerous distraction from the fight against al-Shabaab insurgents who have been trying to overthrow the government for more than a decade.
Moving over to Nigeria, Nigerian entrepreneur builds electric minibuses in clean energy push. Nigerian entrepreneur Mustafa Gijabo has been converting petrol minibuses into electric vehicles at his workshop, but he's now going a step further to build a solar power battery-powered buses from scratch in a push to promote clean energy and curb pollution. Now, Africa's top producer and exporter of crude oil has heavily subsidized gasoline and a petty supply of electricity, a combination that might discourage anyone from investing in electric vehicles. But Gajibo, a 30-year-old university dropout and resident of Maiduguri city in Nigeria's northeast, is undaunted. He says rising global oil prices and pollution make electric vehicles a worthwhile alternative in Nigeria. At his workshop, he has already stripped combustion engines from 10 minibuses, powering them with solar batteries. The buses, which have been operating for just over a month, cover a distance of 100 kilometers on a single charge, he said. His most ambitious project is building the buses from scratch. They will be equipped with solar panels and batteries. In Nigeria, like most of Africa, electric vehicles have not yet gained traction because they are more expensive and there is little electricity and no infrastructure to charge vehicles. For now, Gajibo has one charging station powered by solar.
Definitely wishing him all the best, such essential innovation. Now in our next story, Mali withdraws from the regional anti-jihadist force G5 Sahel. Mali's junta announced on Sunday that it will quit a West African anti-jihadist force after it was blocked from assuming the presidency of the regional group. The country's departure from the G5 Sahel security force deepens its isolation after its neighbors hit it with sanctions in January over perceived foot dragging in restoring civilian rule. Mali's diplomatic relations with Western allies, including former colonial power France, have also deteriorated, especially over its recent rapprochement with Russia. Earlier this month, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said political instability and human rights violations in Mali and Burkina Faso were undermining the Sahel's anti-jihadist operations and called for returning to power to civilians as soon as possible. But Mali's junta claims it is a victim of politicking. The government of Mali is deciding to withdraw from all the organs and bodies of the G5 Sahel, including the joint force fighting the jihadists, Bamako announced in a statement. The G5 Sahel, which also includes Mauritania, Chad, Burkina and Niger, launched in 2014 with an anti-jihadist force added in 2017. Mali is struggling under sanctions imposed by other West African countries over the military's decision to retain power following multiple coups. The junta has opted for a 2-year transition, while the Economic Community of West African States is pushing for 16 months maximum. All right, that brings us to the end of the first half of our top stories. After the break, we'll be talking about Ethiopia peacekeepers from Tigray arriving in Sudan for asylum. Stay with us.
This is Still Africa Good Morning, bringing you the pertinent news stories. In our next story, Ethiopia ex-peacekeepers from Tigray arrive in Sudan for asylum. Some 40 former peacekeepers hailing from Ethiopia's war-wrecked Tigray region arrived Sunday in eastern Sudan after seeking asylum, according to an AFP correspondent. Last month, more than 500 UN peacekeepers who were deployed in the disputed Abyei region between Sudan and South Sudan asked Khartoum for asylum, citing fears for their safety if they were to return home. On Sunday, an official with Sudan's Refugee Commission confirmed that hundreds of Ethiopian peacekeepers requested asylum after the end of their mission in Abyei. Arrivals of the asylum seekers will continue daily until they are all moved, said the official, who spoke on condition of anonymity. An AFP correspondent said the ex-peacekeepers who arrived on Sunday were taken to the Gargouk refugee camp in eastern Sudan.
Now, in our next story, Uganda sued over digital ID system that excludes millions. Millions of Ugandans on whose behalf an alliance of charities has sued the government are arguing that vulnerable groups have been denied access to potentially life-saving services due to flaws in the national ID card rollout. The three charities, the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, Unwanted Witness, and the Health Equity and Policy Initiative, estimate up to one-third of adults do not have the biometric ID card 7 years after the system was introduced. Most of those affected are poor and marginalized, such as the elderly who have been unable to claim welfare payments, as well as pregnant women who have been turned away from health centers, they said, citing research conducted last year. The lack of national ID has also prevented many Ugandans from opening a bank account, buying a mobile SIM card, enrolling in college, gaining formal employment, and getting a passport, they added. The three organizations filed the lawsuit on April 25, saying the mandatory use of the national ID was exclusionary and violated citizens' rights to key services. They want the court to compel the government to accept alternative forms of identification for social and healthcare services. Officials at the National Identification and Registration Authority, which oversees the digital IDs, have previously acknowledged that the system needs improvement, adding that measures would be taken to increase card issuance. Now, an estimated 1 billion people, 40% of whom live in Africa, do not have official proof of identity, greatly limiting their ability to access health, education, and financial services, according to World Bank estimates.
In our next story, thousands in Tunisia protest against president, demand democratic return. Thousands of Tunisians protested on Sunday against President Kais Saied, demanding a return to the normal democratic order and rejecting his replacement of the Independent Electoral Commission with one he named himself. Now, the people want democracy, and Saied has led the country to starvation, were two slogans chanted by the protesters at the main rally in central Tunis, the biggest against him in months, a week after a far smaller demonstration in his support. It has become clear that the street supports a return to the democratic path, said Samira Chachochi, the deputy leader of the dissolved parliament, who, like Said's other opponents, accused him of a coup, underscoring the broad opposition among political parties to Said, who appears to retain some popularity among ordinary people. Hundreds of supporters of Tunisia's former autocratic leader held their own separate protest against him. Now, Saied has entrenched his one-man rule since seizing executive power last summer, dismissing parliament, moving to rule by decree, and saying he will replace the democratic constitution through a referendum.
In our next story, Shanghai targets June COVID lockdown exit as China economy slumps. Shanghai set out plans on Monday for the end of the painful COVID-19 lockdown that has lasted more than 6 weeks, heavily bruising China's economy, and for the return of more normal life from June 1. The full lockdown of Shanghai and COVID curbs on hundreds of millions of consumers and workers in dozens of China's cities have inflicted economic pain across a range of sectors, adding to fears the economy could shrink in the second quarter. Data on Monday showed China's industrial output and retail sales fell in April at the fastest in more than 2 years, missing expectations. Recent data has been bleak. Catering revenue sank 22.7%, property sales by value slumped 46.6%, and auto sales crashed 47.6%.
Swinging over to East Africa, what next for 19 MPs expelled by Chadema? Tanzanians are this week expected to follow parliamentary proceedings with keen interest following Chadema's decision last week to expel 19 party members who are special seats MPs. Chadema's Executive Council met in Dar es Salaam last Wednesday and upheld the Central Committee's decision to strip the 19 of membership. But 2 days later, some of the MPs were back in Parliament, indicating that their expulsion by the party that had supposedly sponsored them had apparently not yet been officially communicated to the August House. However, Chadema's Secretary General John Munyika said on his Twitter account that the party's letter had reached the Speaker's office and added that the Constitution should be respected.
All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. After the break, we talk about the sub-lineages of the COVID Omicron variant right here on Africa Good Morning. Adam Tas is coming to Windhoek to help build a brighter future for education. Join us at the Sounds of Caring concert at Windhoek High School Vegkop on 20 and 21 May, where he will be performing with Von Arends and Rian Smith. Tickets cost $200 Namibian and are available via eticket.my.na. All proceeds go towards the African Child Development Trust. Now, WHO COVID-19 technical lead Dr. Maria van Kerkhove answers questions about the sub-lineages of the Omicron variant and how WHO is tracking this virus that causes COVID-19. Have a look.
So today I'm here to give a brief update on the Omicron variant of concern, and in particular some of the sublineages that are circulating globally, and in particular BA.4 and BA.5, as well as BA.2.12.1. So let's first start with an update of BA.4 and BA.5. And in particular, when we're looking at variants of concern or any variants circulating globally, what we're looking at is to determine if there's any changes in transmission, in severity, in immune escape, in reinfection, and of course, the impacts of our countermeasures such as diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines. So BA.4 and BA.5 have been detected in a number of countries. So far, there are a few hundred sequences that are available of both BA.4 and BA.5, but this will change as sequencing increases around the world. Most of the cases of BA.4 and BA.5 have been detected in South Africa. With regards to what may happen in other countries, it depends. It depends on a number of factors, including the population level immunity from vaccination and or past infection, as well as other sublineages of Omicron that are currently circulating. This is why it is really important that surveillance is maintained, if not enhanced, so that we can track these known variants that are circulating around the world. We are also evaluating the severity of BA.4 and BA.5. What we're looking at is, are there any increases in hospitalization among the cases that are detected with BA.4 and BA.5? It's still very early days with this. We are starting to see a little bit of an increase in hospitalizations in South Africa, but that's also due to the fact that we're seeing increases in cases. What experts are trying to determine is if this is due to BA.4 and BA.5. In addition to looking at severity in people, there are a number of studies that are also underway that are looking at severity in the lab. These studies are currently ongoing, and this is similar to what we do when we are trying to evaluate any of the variants that are circulating. As this information becomes available, we'll make this information available to you. As with all of the sublineages classified under Omicron, which is a variant of concern, there is some level of immune escape. There are some studies that are underway looking at the immune escape of BA.4 and BA.5 compared to other sublineages. What we can say at the present time is that it is really critical that people get vaccinated. Vaccines still work incredibly well against preventing severe disease and death. So when it is your turn, please get vaccinated. We also wanted to provide an update of an Omicron sublineage BA.2.12.1. As with all of the sublineages of Omicron, we are tracking transmissibility, severity, and immune escape, as well as impact on countermeasures. There are about a few thousand sequences available of this variant, BA.2.12.1, and there are many studies that are underway to evaluate this further. There's limited information that we have so far about this variant. Most of the sequences of this Omicron variant are identified in the United States. There is a slight growth advantage of BA.2.12.1 over BA.2, and so we expect more cases to be detected of this variant. So it's been more than 5 months since Omicron was classified as the variant of concern at the global level, and WHO and our partners are tracking many sublineages of this variant. The virus continues to evolve. What is really critical is that surveillance continues, and not only do people get tested and receive the clinical care that they need, but that we at WHO and our partners around the world are able to track the known variants of concern and all of their sublineages, as well as the detection of the possibility of new emerging variants of concern. So it is really critical that testing continues, that sequencing continues, and that there's good geographic representation of those sequences, that samples are shared, that isolates are shared so that research can be carried out so that we could better understand transmission, severity, immune escape, as well as the impact of our countermeasures. If we don't have sequencing continue, if we don't have surveillance continue, we will not be able to do this in real time. We will not be able to carry out the studies or be able to advise and make the best advice available to all of you who are out there. What we can say, without question, is that it is really important that you get vaccinated when it's your turn and receive the full course of those doses. Being vaccinated protects against severe disease and death, and it can keep you and your loved ones safe.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. We now cross over to Botswana, speaking to Maseho, our correspondent, who is bringing us the latest news on the ground. Good morning, Maseho. Good morning, Maseho.
Good morning in studio and good morning, Africa. It's good to be here today.
Awesome. So in your first story, sharp rise in motorist targeted crime in Mogadishane. Sorry, I can't pronounce that correctly. Can you please expand on that story?
Yes, Mogadishane police say they are overwhelmed with reports where criminals target motorists when they slow down for speed humps in some of the locations in their policing area. Acting Station Commander Assistant Superintendent Mpuluki Ramapoy yesterday told a Kotla meeting held by Area Member of Parliament Tumiso Rakhare that robberies targeting businesses have stabilized while those targeting motorists have risen. He noted that the criminals are dangerous and at times can injure their victims. Ramapoy told the gathering that the criminals seem to be on an operation as there are vehicles which drop them off at various crime hotspots. He said Mogodisani police have put in place a plan to fight these criminal activities and was confident that they will apprehend the culprits.
All right, now staying with transport, taxi drivers call for fare increase once again due to fuel price increase. And I'd like you to take your next story as well. Botswana receives requests to supply coal internationally as Russia-Ukraine war wages on.
All right. So the public transport operators have called for an increase in fares following yet another fuel price hike. Public transport operators in Muchudi have called on the Minister of Transport to increase passenger fares following this week's fuel increases. Fuel prices were adjusted this week, with unleaded petrol 93 being increased by 1.48 thebe per litre, unleaded 95 by 1.54 thebe per litre, diesel by 2.74 thebe, and paraffin by 2.6 thebe per litre. BERA Acting Chief Executive Officer Duncan Muruzi said the increases are necessitated by a continuing rise in international oil prices and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has been the main driver of oil price increases, rising by 30% since the war. Speaking this week, public transport operators said if government does not act swiftly to increase fares, they will go on strike. It is reported that this morning, a circulation went around on social media in various WhatsApp groups of taxi drivers where they said today they will strike. So if you're in Gaborone, if you're in Botswana and you have to travel to work today and you use public transport, do leave about an hour earlier because your transit will be disrupted. Last but not least in my stories, Botswana has received inquiries to supply coal to Europe as Ukraine-Russia war wages on. President Mokgweetsi Masisi says Botswana has been receiving inquiries to supply coal to Europe and estimates that demand from Western countries could top 1 million tons a year. This as Ukraine war forces Europe to pivot more to Africa for energy resources. Since Russia invaded Ukraine at the end of February, Europe has sought to cut its gas imports from Russia, which many European nations previously relied on, and is looking to other parts of the world to meet its fuel demand. The move potentially opens the floodgates to coal supplies from Africa, sending prices sharply higher and spurring investment to Africa. The International Energy Agency says Botswana's coal production has been limited and mostly exported to neighboring countries. The country, however, plans to increase production to meet this demand. This brings me to the end of my stories today. From me, myself.
All right, goodbye, Masejo. Thank you for bringing us the pertinent stories from Botswana. Next up, weather.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. In our next video, the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board hosted their regional Know to Grow information session in Odongwa at the Ondangwa Town Lot yesterday. The K2G is a regional knowledge dissemination capacity building initiative focused on financing and market access. The sessions are catered for micro, small, and medium enterprises by raising awareness and opportunities for growth. The sessions have been hosted in the Oshikoto and Oshana regions since 10th May, and they will make their last stop for the north in Enana today. Let's take a look at this video.
They try to look for investment opportunities from people who want to invest into the country, and not only investment from other countries, but also investments in Namibia. So you find that somebody might have, for example, have a set business, but would like to venture into other businesses. So somebody is having businesses, having a bit of finance, and they now want to venture into businesses, and they have that extra funds to use. So we are able to facilitate opportunities, and we take these people and show them how or in which sectors to cater to and how they can do business going forward. Then we also try to attract those that are in other countries wanting to do business in Namibia, which is called foreign direct investment. So Namibia has vast opportunities available for investment, and we are there to ensure that these opportunities are all unlocked. The second one is what we call the Investor Aftercare Center, which looks at investor facilitation. So once we've identified investments or investors, they now need to set up in Namibia, and they need to be shown how, and for example, to start operating their businesses, how to register their businesses, which offices to go to. So this department is there to ensure that these people are taken care of and that they don't have any barriers in entering the market. The third one is SME development. Like I said earlier, I operate directly under this division, where I'm responsible for capacity building and market access. So the SME division is there to facilitate a targeted support for development and scalability of SMEs. So we want SMEs to grow and scale from one position to the next. In life, we always want the next step, we always want to go a greater step. So we are there to ensure that there are opportunities for SMEs and that these opportunities are fully exploited. After that, we have a division that ensures that skills are aligned with investment. So we have various priority sectors, and this department is there to ensure that people's skills are aligned with the priority sectors. I'll use an example. Let's say, for instance, our examples, or one of our priority sectors is renewable energy. So we want to ensure that when people are being trained, when they're going to school, are these skills that they're being taught in school, are they aligned to the priorities of the government? If you want to go south, are these people being trained to operate in the south, or are they in a different direction? So you want to all go the same direction. These ones are more operational, so I won't touch deeply into this. Just maybe briefly on one of our mottos. No one should be left behind. Accountability, making a difference, integrity, brilliance, innovation, and agility. If you put those together, you will be able to spell our country's name, Namibia. So, yes. I briefly spoke about our priority sectors. The government has a lot of sectors. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they are over 30 or slightly under 30. But at the investment board, we focus on this: renewable energy, food industry, chemicals and basic materials, transport and logistics, various services, metal mining and related industries, and machinery and electronics. Like I said, unfortunately we don't have a speaker for renewable energy today, but renewable energy is one of the sectors that has been receiving a lot of attention lately. I'm sure you've heard about the green hydrogen and all those kinds of things. So our country is set up in a way that we have such strong sun power, which is a good source for renewable energy, and also wind. Many countries might have one or the other, but not both. Or if they have both, it's not at the capacity of the one that we have in Nigeria.
Cash direct or without collateral. We have transformative lending, to address persistent economic issues, which now addresses the youth finances to empower the youth to develop next generations of entrepreneurs. What are the financing opportunities for young entrepreneurs or business people in that? We have 3 types of lending, actually 4. There's skill-based finance. The skill-based finance is mainly just for young professions and young artisans. I'll actually speak more about them in the next presentation. And we have now the SME finance. That's now for any other general business, even if you're not part of the young artisan or young professional. We also have large enterprises that we refer to as investment. We have collateral and credit guarantee scheme. This is the loan that Letitia was talking about. Okay, without wasting time, let us divulge in the type of SME finances that we do finance. From the development bank perspective, how do we view an SME? Who's an SME? An SME should have at least an annual turnover of less than 10 million. We finance either if you are expanding or for startup. Why do we say an SME is required? We finance at least that should at least have or make an annual turnover of less than 10 million. Because the needs of an SME is not like that of large enterprises. For an SME, their needs are usually less complex, usually require lower amount, and your products are normally not complex as the large enterprises. The minimum loan for
NMH Ad Spotter spots the daily adverts in all NMH printed editions, from the daily newspapers to the retail specials, as well as weekly, monthly and yearly focus editions. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, please contact adspotter@synergy.com.na. NMH Ad Spotter. Spot it, like it, buy it.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Heading straight into your economic news stories. Hungry for growth, Jubilee Metals looks to northern Zambia. An 800 million rand investment program has expanded the footprint of metals processing company Jubilee Metals beyond South Africa to deliver significant growth, and the company is hungry for more as it looks to northern Zambia. In a market update on Monday, Jubilee said it had achieved milestones in its southern copper refining strategy, which aims to produce up to 12,000 tons of copper units per annum, including a cobalt byproduct from certain cobalt-containing feed streams. Commissioning activities for Project Rhone, a processing plant which feeds the operational Sable refinery, are now nearing conclusion, and the plant is expected to reach design capacities during July this year. Adding to copper refining capacity as its Sable refinery, Jubilee said the construction of a cobalt refining circuit is underway and expected to commence commissioning next month. Designed to produce up to 1,200 tons of cobalt per year, it has the potential to bring in significant revenues, the company said. In South Africa, the company's new and expanded Inyoni operations, a chrome and platinum group metals facility, is already exceeding targets, and Jubilee on course to achieve its PGM ounce production target of 44,000 ounces and 1.2 million tons of chrome concentrate per annum.
The company is set to expand indeed. In our next story, Zimbabwe allows import of basic commodities to curb price hikes. Zimbabwe is allowing ordinary citizens with access to US dollars to import basic commodities for their own use to counter substantial price increases by retailers. Finance Minister Mthuli Nkupe said the government opened imports of basic commodities to citizens with immediate effect. This will be done through the lowering of import tariffs and other accompanying measures, Nkupe said in an email statement late on Saturday. No further details were provided. Now, annual inflation accelerated in April to 96% amid a weakening of the local currency in recent weeks. The Zimbabwe dollar trades at the interbank rate loosely referred to as the willing buyer, willing seller exchange rate of 281 Zimbabwean dollars per US dollar. It's much weaker on the parallel market where it changes hands at 400 Zimbabwean dollars per US dollar. Now, the government will also pay farmers 30% of the producer price for corn and other grain deliveries in US dollars and the balance in local currency to encourage early delivery of the stable corn by the farmers. Now, the US dollar payment will be calculated at the prevailing willing buyer, willing seller rate published by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe on the date of delivery, he said. Now, the Southern African nation produced a record 2.72 million tons of corn from its last planting season, but the current harvest is likely to slump to 1.56 million tons, Ministry of Agriculture projections show.
Now, South Africa's Vodacom targets a quarter of group revenue from digital financial services in medium term. South Africa's Vodacom Group expects new digital and financial services to generate over a quarter of group service revenue in the medium term, its chief executive said on Monday as the telecom operator reported a rise in full-year operating profit. Vodacom, like its peer MTN Group, has been transforming its business from just providing telecom services to building a technology company that now enables its 129.6 million customers to also lend money, make payments, shop online, and control appliances at home using smartphones. It is betting on millions of Africans that still don't have access to financial services and on the continued growth of smartphone adoption and internet penetration on the continent. Vodacom's aggressive focus on new services, which include digital and financial services, fixed broadband, and Internet of Things, the concept of connecting household devices to the internet, supported its normalized group service revenue growth of 4.6% to 79.9 billion rand in the year ended March 31. Revenue from financial services, the largest component of sales of new services, jumped 14.4% to 7.6 billion rand.
In our next story, we are in Mozambique. Food products must be labeled in Portuguese by July, the government has said. Shopkeepers have until July to put labels in Portuguese on products sold in Mozambique, announced the National Inspection of Economic Activities. This year is the last in which the government will grant a tolerance until July for traders to label food products in Portuguese, said the National Inspector of Economic Activities, Rita Freitas, quoted on Friday by Mozambican news agency IAM. Now, Freitas was speaking during a training seminar on the legal system of labeling on the packaging of food products. All goods placed on shop shelves in Mozambique must be identified in the official language of the country and will no longer be labeled only in foreign languages, she added. Now, the measure aims to protect the rights of consumers, namely knowing exactly what product they are buying and its characteristics. Freitas said that goods for sale that were not identified in Portuguese will be removed from the market.
All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. Now, I'd like to confess that as of yesterday, I have developed a disliking for zebras, particularly because of the Newcastle kit as they beat Arsenal. Now, to give us sports stories which do not have any emotional attachment is Ari Hochad.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, and it was a busy sport weekend, and one of them was the tennis, the Italian Open that took place in Rome, and the winners there, men's section was Novak Djokovic and Iga Swiatek in the women's section. Going back to the men's section, Novak Djokovic remained in the world number one. That was after the world rankings, new world rankings was announced after the weekend's finals, and the one player that moves up by one position is Stefanos Tsitsipas. He played in the final against Djokovic but lost by 2 sets, and 2-0. He lost that final. Tsitsipas is now number 4 in the world, and he overtakes Rafael Nadal. That moves up to number 5 in the world. Other players to mention, maybe number 6 in the world is Carlos Alcaraz. He's number 9. He's just 19 years old, and he's already number 6 in the world. And also it is Daniil Medvedev that is still number 2 in the world rankings. On the women's side, it is Iga Swiatek that just cements her number 1 position. She's won the last 5 tournaments she's played in, like we talked about earlier, and Iga Swiatek won the Italian Open, beating Ons Jabeur. Ons Jabeur is now up to her highest ranking that she's ever been in her career. She's up to number 6 in the world. She's from Tunisia, and she was the first player from Tunisia and the first player from Africa to win a 1,100 tournament on the WTA tour of the ladies or the women, and it is Ons Jabeur that is now number 6 in the world rankings. Moving on to cycling news, with Monday being a resting day, Tuesday the 10th stage of the Giro d'Italia will be quite a tough one, and the overall leader still in the overall classification still in the Giro d'Italia is that Joan Pedro Lopez. He's from Spain, is the overall leader. The combined time for the first 9 stages is 37 hours 52 minutes and 1 second. Then just 12 seconds behind Lopez in second place is Joe Almeida. He is from Portugal, and then 14 seconds behind Lopez in third position in the overall classification is Romain Bardet. He is from France. So on Tuesday, the 10th stage will be quite a tough one. It will be 196 kilometers. It is described as quite hilly, but the first 100 kilometers will be flat, and then from 100 kilometers, the next 96 kilometers is going to be difficult. There's going to be 4 climbs in that 96 kilometers to the end, so it's going to be quite tough for all the riders, and the climbers will probably benefit from this stage. So that is the Giro d'Italia continuing on Tuesday. And now we continue with some golf news on international sports, and it is LIV, the Golf International Invitational Breakaway Golf League that will start on the 9th of June. Just in a few weeks' time, that will be in England. And some of the players that were already confirmed is Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia, Phil Mickelson, and also Martin Kaymer. And it seems like 40 more players on the DP World Tour, that is the European Tour, have asked to be released to play in that tournament on the 9th of June. So lots of money that's been offered by the Saudi Arabian-backed league, and it is the first tournament will be total prize money of $25 million, and that is quite a lot of money, and the winner will receive $4 million to be first, and just 48 players will be allowed into the field. It will just be played over 3 rounds, and even the player that comes last in 48th position will earn $120,000. So there's also talk of Ian Poulter of the UK still considering, and even Louis Oosthuizen of South Africa, but that has not been confirmed. So the first tournament will be the 9th of June in London, and then the second tournament will be played in the USA in Oregon, close to Seattle. That will be the 30th of June. And now to conclude today's international sport, we go to MotoGP news, and it was the French Grand Prix that took place over the weekend, and the French favorite for the MotoGP, that is Fabio Quartararo of France. He didn't win or didn't even finish on the first 3 places. He was 4th in his hometown Grand Prix, but still that means that he is now leading in the overall standings, and he is leading with 102 points. That is Fabio Quartararo of France. Second on the overall standings at the moment is Alexei Esparago. He is of Spain. And then Enia Bastianini. He is from Italy. He came in, he is at the moment third with 94 points. Esparago is on 98 points. And it was Enia Bastianini of Italy that won the French Grand Prix over the weekend. And it was Jack Miller of Australia in second place. And then Alexei Esparago of Spain that was third. So that's the international sports news for today. I hope you have a great day and we'll talk again tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning from the top of the hour. Let's have a look at the highlights from this morning's broadcast. Some Ethiopians claim forced recruitment by Tigrayan forces. 10 Nigerian cabinet ministers resign to run in 2023 polls. Somalia re-elects former leader Hassan Sheikh Mohamud as president. Nigerian entrepreneur builds electric minibuses to clean energy push. Mali withdraws from the regional anti-jihadist force G5 Sahel. Hungry for growth, Jubilee Metals looks to northern Zambia. Those have been our stories.
And with that, we've come to the end of our show. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Tuesday morning. Now, do remember that Africa Good Morning is repeated on our OneUp2 website and our DSTV channel 285 and our Gotv channel 94 between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. every weekday. Now, if you have any comments regarding our program, do share them with us and we'll gladly get back to you. And if you have any photos or happenings in your parts of Africa, do share them with us and we might just include it in our program. I am Glenn Rashipurat.
And I am Ashwin Berry Swerajaganaka.